Hello, everyone. So today I got the chance to talk to Fahad from Fahadouken, as you guys know him. We had a very, very nice conversation about so many things. He dropped so many golden nuggets for you to listen to and learn from. So here's the video, and I hope you enjoy it, and see you on the next one. Hello. How are you?
Hi, Chadi. Good to be here.
Wallahi, it's been a very long time that we haven't met in person. Because of the COVID situation, I haven't been able to visit Qatar in a while. But how have you been?
Really good. Been busy, which is a good thing.
Busy is good. I remember when we first spoke about Equian.
Yeah.
It was still very hush hush. People knew you were working on something, and you were showing me, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool! I can't wait till you bring it out." Because, and we saw that when you finally brought it out, it was like, wow, the response was amazing. So, as Fahadouken, we all know you're the biggest collector. For those of you that don't know, which I find very rare in our community, Fahadouken is the biggest CNFT collector we have in the space. One of the most generous with his time with people, even though he's very busy. This is something I appreciate. And I remember when I first came into the space, someone was like, "You have to talk to Fahad." I'm like, "Fahad? That's an Arabic name. Of course I have to talk to Fahad."
Yeah.
And then we connected, and then you have only been supportive and positive and nice and very open and direct with your feedback. Like you're not that type of person that gives feedback just to be nice. No, you're like, "Are you sure you want to hear it?" I'm like, "Yeah." You're like, "Okay." Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, "Okay, thank you. This makes sense. This helps. Thank you for that." So this is just my intro for Fahad. Today is the 22nd of January. We're pre-recording this. And so if you were to put in your own words, who is Fahadouken?
Actually, let me do something. Let me do something different. Since you gave me a very nice introduction, I'll do one for you. So, when I first heard about Chadi coming up with a collection, I also realized the same. I'm like, hey, this guy seems to be somewhere in the Middle East, and there were no other creators on Cardano from there. So I also felt a bit more at home. And I wanted to support back, as Chadi said. I have a genuine interest in number one in Cardano, number two in NFTs, and specifically in Cardano NFTs. Obviously, I have a stake in the whole space in many different ways. One being an owner of so many collections, and also by me now having my own multiple projects on there. So obviously, I have an interest in the whole space succeeding. And it's in my interest for everything to be great and excellent, both from a technical point of view, from the quality of releases, from the kind of community. So it's in my genuine interest whether I like it or not. Okay, that's the reality of the situation. And I could be maybe selfish and think of only my projects and how well they do, but it's not really the case. And when you become a collector, you kind of also want everything you have. So if you're a person who has like just one bag, you're gonna end up being shilling that bag, whether you want it or not, or whether you feel it or not. Sometimes there's an unintended bias towards those things, which is natural. But I feel in my situation, it's actually I'm spread so thinly that I am in almost everything that I can't really pick and choose. I want everything to do well, and it just in the end it ended up transpiring and becoming the whole, let's say, feel I have towards the space, regardless of whether I own it or not. Because then it also I start to become under the pressure of, okay, wait a second, am I like not giving this enough attention just because I don't own it? No, I don't want to be that guy. So I end up also compensating for that. So it kind of ends up being supporting everything. But I'm super happy to be doing this. It's really enjoyable. So Chadi came out with a very exciting project. Back then, nothing was around that even vaguely looked like it. Now we have a few alternatives which are kind of doing some similar in terms of, let's say, some technicality, but not really the art part. But it was a nice combination of concept and delivery and community. Call Me by Your Name. It had a nice concept of having a portrait style image, but also had some AI element which changed the whole artistic element. And then it was nice because it was also a different style of drop. Back then it was also fewer options of minting. So basically they were pre-minted, if I remember right, and they were like, you could preview them and you could go, and you had the luxury of having the time to go and see them one by one, saying, hey, I like this one. Hey, I actually want to buy this one. And maybe in some other blockchains it's still, and for other projects even today, some actually still use this kind of method. But it wasn't a random mint, it was rather a pick and choose. And by the time I heard it, maybe about 80% of the collection was already sold. So I looked at the rest, and like everyone I liked, I was like, oh, it's already sold. Oh, this one I also like, and it was already sold. And it was a few that I really didn't like that much, but I was like, they're all nice, but it's not, because you already saw a few that I really liked and they were already gone. I felt like, hey, maybe. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just get some. Shadi really seems like a really nice project. I want to get in. But then Chadi was nice enough to actually hook me up with one I really liked in the second series after that. That was really early, I think in May, was it? Maybe?
May, yes.
Yeah. So it was ages ago. It's almost like almost a year. Like a few months, it's going to be a year. So it's kind of funny.
Like, do you realize how last May feels like 10 years ago?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Insane.
So that's and then I met much more in, like, the community of Cardano NFTs in general was so small that the same people you would see everywhere. So it was still that early where, my guys are also here at Chadi. That's cool. Okay? but at the same time, so basically it was all of us friends, and then Chadi was the new guy, even though he was the creator. It was kind of funny in that sense. But since then he's always established himself as a friend of the space. He's always been supporting. He's launched some springboards and supporting artists in different projects, and making his own, which I see around us here with some very cute faces. So I think we'll get to the detail of that. But that's my introduction of Chadi. I hope you don't mind the swap of roles that we just did.
Not at all. It humbles me so much. And I remember when people explained to me who Fahadouken was back then, and I was like, I should have, like, coming from luxury, because I worked in luxury, you always put the collectors not on a pedestal, but you kind of give them the VIP treatment because they have invested so much in a certain space. And even back then, you had invested so much into the space that it was obvious you're not doing it just for the fun of it. You were doing it because you believed in something, and that something was Cardano, and that other thing was CNFTs. And that's where the respect for me came in for you, because you truly put every second of time you had in this. You had your family, you had your job, and you had this. And this one, whenever you were not in the other two aspects, you were there. And everybody can see this, because I mean, I have been lucky enough to meet you face to face. I'm probably one of the only people in this space that sat down and had dinner with you a couple of times, because I traveled to Qatar so much that I was able to sit with you and laugh. And God, I remember the first time we met, we're like, yeah, we'll have dinner for an hour. We sat for like 6 hours, and at the end we're like, but we don't want to leave. We're having so much fun, because we both the first time met someone from the space, and we were like, yes, this is so exciting. And that is where, for me, it cemented that the online persona is exactly the same as the offline persona. Like, you are not someone who's going to put a face on. You say what you have to say. You know that you do your research before you say it. If for any reason something else comes up, you will say, okay, with this new stuff that came up, I changed my opinion. You have no problem saying that.
Exactly. Nothing, no shame in admitting you are wrong. If you'll allow me to make a comment maybe first on the collectors on a pedestal kind of thing.
Yes.
I'll have to say we need to be a bit sensitive, because I agree that maybe big investors or collectors maybe have a kind of an influence in terms of their ability to maybe purchase or maybe support and fund projects in a way. But I also believe that from a, let's say, fairness point of view, this also like the only I think that as a project creator as well, and that's how I would also treat any big investors. Like the only privilege that I would consider to somebody who actually, for example, owns more of a collection is maybe to consider, for example, communication maybe more often, because they might, for example, need to know a little bit more if they have a lot. Beyond, I'm talking here beyond the public announcement kind of thing. It's a bit of a tricky, let's say, subject to handle, because in the end, like the ultimate goal, eventually you would want it to be transparent and not really have difference between different, let's say, levels of investors, because the small guy is as important as the big guy. It's just in a different way. It's just in a different way. And one brings something to the space that the other doesn't. So I actually appreciate that, and I do think that every player has their role. It's just basically identifying and everyone having on the let's say rights points of view to have an equal right and to have equal treatment in that sense. But obviously, there's also a difference in the customer mindset. Like you said, you work in luxury, so you kind of understand that. It doesn't mean that those who can't afford luxury are looked down on in a way.
No,
never. It's just identifying the different needs of each one. So, for example, usually the big investors would usually have less time to spend. So that's something to consider, that they will usually not be able to keep track of the small details. But it also means that they don't mind if these small details change, usually. While on the other hand, maybe the small player, they can be like very interested in the small details, but that also means they usually give back to the community much more, because they're usually much more active, because they have the time and passion to contribute and create for the project. So it's an interesting spectrum. Like I think for many creators, they would rather actually have their whole collection with many owners of only one piece spread out, and each one actively contributed, rather than having 40% of their collection in an investor wallet. Because in the end they're under pressure, and in the end it's only that they fill a gap, that if they can't sell the whole collection, that they have somebody collecting. But optimally, every creator would like to have one piece with everyone instead of one person hoarding them. I can imagine that actually being the better case, but in reality, sometimes that doesn't really be the case, and you can't really avoid it. Anyway, it's just I went on a tangent, but it's just an interesting topic.
You see, the point of those chats I'm having, I don't like to call them interviews. That's why the segment is called Chatting Cardano with Chadi, is because the way I see those chats going is that we're getting to know the person behind the projects. Like, you're one of the few that's out there, so people maybe know a little bit more about you, seeing your personality on different interviews. So this chat might be a little different from the others, because people coming to watch this will probably know who Fahadouken is. If not, they can find so many other interviews to kind of get to know you a little bit. So one thing I did in those chats is always ask the person I'm talking to is, who are you? Like, if you were to tell us, if no one has met you before from the space, how would you introduce yourself? Like, who is Fahadouken?
Okay, let me come up with a nice what is Fahadouken pitch. So I'm in the scope of Cardano NFTs, okay? I'm a person who entered into Cardano before NFTs existed on Cardano. I'm a person who also heard about NFTs before they were on Cardano, and realized to an extent what they bring to the table. Back then, NFTs were already kind of mooning on ETH. But I guess in Chadi's perspective, he probably knows more that maybe kind of movement was not for every single project, but rather some of them had a good potential to do so. So I was kind of interested in the whole concept, but at the same time, I was in Cardano and I believed in it, technically speaking. So when I heard about Spacewords as the first, let's say, public available mint for Cardano NFTs, and I did have the ADA to spend on that, I figured it would be fun to give that a try, and maybe I have something to do with my ADA where I can buy something, and it's interesting. And that basically started the whole story. I minted about 50 space buds back then. I thought I was stupid for buying so many at the highest tier because they were like 90 ADA each versus those who bought them at 10 ADA. And they're like, I might regret this decision. I'm buying a whole 50 of them at this kind of 80 to 90 ADA tier. And why am I spending so much ADA on these like cartoons? But then, I mean, in retrospect, that was one of the best things I've done in my collection. But that's what it is. And then that's when I was like kind of like exploring what it was or how it felt to do this. I'm thankful to Zieg and Alessandro for creating Spacewords as a first experience, because if that wasn't positive, we probably wouldn't have stuck around. But because that felt so good, we ended up sticking around and believing in the potential. And then the road was a bit rockier in that period, like leading up to that. But we still believed in it because we always had Spacebuds as a first metric or experience, which we thought, okay, maybe the next one will be as good as Spacebuds. And now I think we're already there and beyond that, where we have so many fun experiences with different mints and people like getting up to that standard or beyond in different types of drops. And you had pixels being very innovative. You had different kind of experiences. So that was really cool. But I still owe it to Spacebuds for setting at least a nice standard, which kept us or gave us faith in NFTs on Cardano. And I think we should all be grateful for that in sense of setting a precedent that gives everyone a good first impression. So then there was a community, Spacebuds community. I had about minted 50 Spacebuds, but I really had no status there, which was fine. And I wasn't really looking for it. But I was interested because I also saw a lot of big players back then who are so bullish. Like I found people buying a Spacebuds bull for, oh my God, 5,000 ADA. I'm like, what are these silly people doing? And somebody bought the Dino for like 20,000 ADA. And I'm like,
the pink Dino, right?
Yeah, I think, I can't remember if it was 20,000 or something. Maybe it was a bit more, I think.
I think it was 20 or 60. I don't remember back then. Someone bought it for a lot. Yeah, I think it was 820 maybe.
A lot. Well, look at how much it is.
A lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But I was like, what are these guys doing? And then eventually it just like kicked in where, wait a second, this guy who bought it for 10K is not going to sell it for 50K. And there's only so few of them. And there's so many believers that these are just going to stick around. And if you look at it today, like the lowest bull offered is for 700,000. And that's just one. And the one after it is like more than 1.5 billion as an offer. And it's not just optics. Like I know the bull owners. We actually now have a small, let's say, community of bull and dino owners. And I know that for a fact, they are not moving their bulls at anything like close to that. And that just tells you from a collector's point of view how much they appreciate what they have. Collectors have a different, let's say, mindset where it's a bit different from let's say traders. Collectors are they are still a form or type of, let's say, trader sometimes, but it's an interesting dynamic where a collector is number one collecting and hoarding stuff of his own because he loves them. Doesn't mean that they're forbidden from selling some of their stuff, because collectors also in the end have to maintain collections and maybe need liquidity sometimes or sell something to get something. But they're on the extreme end of the spectrum of how soon they are to flip something versus, for example, the opposite side, what usually people call a flipper, which is somebody who just buys and immediately sells like within a day or so. So they're like a completely opposite side of the spectrum. And then there's the average person, maybe somewhere in between. So I ended up collecting Cardano NFTs after the Spacebuds mints. When I saw the community, I thought, okay, maybe the best approach is thinking all these Spacebuds are probably going to do well because it's so early. So instead of trying to go and pay a bit more for some of the rarer ones, I opted to actually just go for a very wide scope view and just buy bundles. I was looking for everyone who is risk averse and doesn't really want to keep holding these buds for a risk. And I bought I think 2 bundles of like 25 buds each at an average of about 200 ADA, 150, 200 ADA each of them. And back then it was still crazy because people minted them for like 50 ADA average, right? So it was like a nice investment to sell each and every one for like 150 ADA. But I also wanted the convenience of not having to go through buying each and every one. So that gave me a bit of volume, and I had about maybe 90 Spacebuds within the first, let's say, 2 weeks of Spacebud release. But none of them were from the rarer species. So I sat on that. My rarest was just 2 sharks, which I had, and nothing beyond that. Sharks are great. They're not bad, but they're like 198 sharks in the collection, which is good considering the 100K, but as the 10K, sorry. But they weren't an elephant or a rhino or a fish or those higher ones.
Yeah.
So I left that aside. Next big drop was Cardano bits. I started aping into that. I went crazy, and I took the same model that people used for Spacebuds, where they were buying up the rarest. So the rarest in bits was the zombies. So I ended up buying up 4 of those zombies. There's 22 of them in the collection. I still have all 4 of them. Cardano bits didn't do as well, even though they're the second collection, 10K big collection. It was a very interesting experience. I think they are still very relevant in history. Obviously, I'm heavily invested into them, so I'm also interested in shilling them, but it's also a reality. If you look into them, they have their own historical value. But that's where
I have to admit, I have a big bag also. I have around 29 of them.
Yeah, I have 180 something of them. But
well, big for me.
Sorry, I shouldn't have one up to you over there. That was not the
no. Go ahead and one up. Okay. No, by all means, please one up, because people love hearing your one ups. So by all means, go ahead. No shame and nothing against it.
I was looking actually into it. I was in one of those Twitter DM groups. Where somebody was talking about wings, and I mentioned that I have 4 winged warriors. I have 1 blue, and they have 3 greens. 1 human green, and then 1 of only 3 aliens with green wings, and the 1 of 1, the only shadow with a green wing. It's a 1 of 1, and I consider one of the top pieces in the collection. And I think, in retrospect, I think Cardano bits is probably one of my best collections in terms of not quantity, but even quality, more so. Because I have just so many of the top tier ones. I have the number 1 rarity in terms of tag count, the mummy with the 3 tags, and they have so many great ones. So I'm really happy to own these. But then it just kept on growing, because we kept on seeing so many interesting collections, and it just felt like I was already in there. I was enjoying it so much. I just enjoyed collecting. I enjoyed the potential that these projects have. Obviously 80-90% of them now have a much lower value than the mint cost, and that's a reality when you get into so many projects, that so many also don't make it. Even though I'm saying this, I do think that they have value beyond their price tag, in a sense. There's a fair bunch of ones that ended up even completely disappearing off the face of the world, which is also a reality. When you have this, it's also a reality in any business. Like when you go and buy anything, so many shops open and end up like not making it. That's fine. And when you go so diverse, you end up also risking it in that way. But it's something I accept. But in the end, also, what I gained that doesn't really go down is the connections, the relationships, the friendships that I've made along the way, the number of amazing people I've met and come to know, many of which are still great friends, and it's absolutely priceless.
Completely agreed with that. I think one of the best things that Cardano or crypto in general has done for people is make those connections that maybe they wouldn't have made any other way. With all those interviews I've had and those chats I've had with people, one thing that always comes up is connection. I think the biggest theme on all of those talks I've had about 17 or 18, I think you're the 17th or 18th person I've spoken to, is connection. Yeah, they're all coming on YouTube slowly. I'm editing them now. I'm doing it all myself, by the way, so it's taking me a little bit of time, plus that guild features, plus all of this. But one thing that I found is connection. People are loving the connection and people feel connected. And that is a beautiful thing to see, especially that, I mean, we're in the Arab world, so maybe we would have connected by mistake somewhere. It's more of a chance that me and you would have connected than me and someone in Argentina or El Salvador or something like that. And to see that, like, I would have never found Mr. Intangible and his work anywhere else. And until today, I remember me and you having a talk about him at the beginning, but until today, he is he is probably one that I will print out and put on a frame somewhere in my house. Your udon ones, your udon for the Faha 100, they're so cute. And udon, and this is kind of what launched udon into, because he did something cool out of nowhere. He just said, yes, I love Fahad, I want to make this for him. And then boom, he did this out of the goodness, and he's such a nice person.
It was a tribute.
It was a gift. It was a tribute, yeah. But then it was such a well done tribute that people recognized his talent. And then he went on to do the Happy Hoppers. There's so many little stories here and there. And if we look, a lot of them are connected. And a lot of the time when it comes to CNFTs, there is Fahadouken in there somewhere. Like Fahadouken is in there somewhere.
As a buyer, maybe, often. Yeah.
But anything. There's always there are few projects that you might have not heard of, but the moment you hear about it, you will put a mental note. And this is what I love about you. You put a mental note that I need to go get more information about it, especially if there's a little bit of buzz. And it's also from that space where you want to protect us. You want to protect the community in space. And when someone comes to you with information, be it good or bad, you will research it. You and your team, maybe. I don't know who does your research for you, but it's fucking insane research.
Usually me. It's funny. It's almost like a crowdsourced thing, because it's me, but see, this is the thing. So my follower base on Twitter actually started with the Cardano bits. So I had a video made which shows like a museum kind of scene, which shows my collection, and that was when I started a dedicated Twitter account for NFTs, and it started growing since then. I'm very thankful and grateful for everyone who does follow me on Twitter. I have about 18,000 followers as of today. This might be historical, and we see maybe 2 years down the road and say, oh, he only had
when it's 180 or 1,800,000.
Who knows? But it's not really something I'm chasing as clout, more as something I appreciate, but also feel very responsible for. And the fact that I feel so connected to most people in the space of Cardano NFTs also makes me feel responsible that when I see something that seems wrong, that I need to basically share it. And sometimes it's not really wrong. Sometimes it's just us being careful, and that's fine. I'd rather pull the trigger a little bit early when I still can fix the situation afterwards, rather than not pull the trigger. And then the risk with crypto in general is it's so easy to buy and transact that it's also so easy to lose money. And this makes it maybe need to be a little bit more diligent. And sometimes it's also too late when we figure things out. But in my opinion, maybe I have harmed some project unintentionally by maybe spreading some concern and then figuring out it was not a proper concern. Usually I am very careful to end up coming back and saying, hey, by the way, we found out that this was fair. I have to set the record straight. I always do this. Maybe some people will only notice the first part and not the second part. And I apologize to anyone if they were harmed for that, but it was never the intention. I also would never harm a project just because I have an issue with them, unless it was a moral or ethical issue that I find. Then I would be happy to share my concerns. But I also hope that nobody sees this as a form of cyberbullying or clout, using clout in an inappropriate way. I've had my fair shares. I can count them as on one hand. It's just 3 basically cases. I don't want to list them now. It's probably more positive interview, but it's just a case of saying it's not really being on one side or on other, or being on Fahad's good side or bad side, because I hope or intend that my good side is just a solid level of ethics and standards, and my bad side being just the absolute like bad side of morals and ethics and standards. So that should be hopefully my compass, and hopefully everyone else who's creating. So if somebody has bad intention, then obviously they would be on my bad side, but they also should be on everyone's bad side. That's
agreed.
Summary of the whole overview. But my point is, creators always should be honest, should always be humble, should always be creative, should always disclose to their buyers what they're getting into or what they're buying. They should always be careful about licensing and rights to what they're making. If they're making original artwork, then they can say it. But if they're not, or if they're using something where most of their work is created by something old or something that already exists, that's something that irritates me a lot, unless it's disclosed or shared before it's being sold. Those are, I think, my main, let's say, pain points, where you don't go and take recycled old work and you sell it as new just because now you have NFTs to use them. If you're proud of what you've made in the past, you can say, well, I made this 5 years ago and now I'm selling it. That's fine. And also, if you made this with a generator that's like will immediately create some assets and you're going to sell them, if you think that's fine and fair and it's not really harmful, then you tell your people before you sell them that, hey, by the way, we're making these with a generator because we're making a game. That's fine. Like in your project's case, for example, for the faces, you said very clearly that this is a portal. I used AI. I'm making these with a generator, and everyone still loves them. But also nobody's disappointed because they bought something, they thought you hand painted them, and then they figured out later after buying, no, they know that this is how it's been made, and that's fine.
Yeah, because they look very hand painted, and this is why I wanted to make sure that I very, very clearly say there is a manual aspect to them, but those were generated. Those were not the ones I am selling at the end product. I see the AI as kind of my collab partner / tool. Like, this is how I see it. This is, in my mind, how I view it.
And that's what puts you on the moral compass, in my opinion, because you're being open, you're being transparent, and you're sharing, and you're proud of what you're making, which is what every artist should be, versus someone who stays quiet, doesn't say it, and wait until they're figured out, and then they're like, no, I actually maybe said someday, sometime, or not, So it's fine. It's just maybe I have high standards or expect more from everyone.
I feel also it comes with maturity and it comes with age. I'm not the youngest guy in the field, I'm 38 and I've made my mistakes in the past. Maybe that's where I learned it. I feel also it comes from a place of fear. Sometimes they want to say it, but they're afraid they might be looked at negatively. I was lucky enough to have Zieg, who introduced me to the scene, and Zieg told me, use your Twitter, use your name. If you don't mind putting your face out, put it out. Don't be afraid because you have good work. Even because, as you know, this was all on ETH, and I burned everything on ETH and brought it to Cardano. And this was something I said from the start. And I took back all the ETH ones from my collectors, which weren't many, by the way. There were only 2 or 3 of them. But they were nice enough to agree for me to delete, and they gave it back to me. They trusted me that I would burn them and give them the ADA version. And then I sold the rest of them. This is how it worked. And I was very clear at the start, and I think people are still clear about it today, I hope at least. But this was my contribution of coming to Cardano from ETH. But one thing that I feel I was lucky with is that I had someone to kind of tell me, advise me, who had I didn't know he was behind Spacebot. I found out later. I was like, dude, why did you never tell me? But I didn't know how big Zieg was in terms of community. He's still not the biggest in terms of following, but he's got right friends in the right places, I should say.
Zieg is a great guy, always been very supportive. Nice. I haven't had many interactions, but the ones I have had with him, he's always been the best. I appreciate what he's done for this space.
A very good example, like you, and that's another reason I stayed in this space, because I could have sold those and said, I made a good bunch of ADA, I'll go home. But no, I stayed because of the people. Like, I met you. You were very supportive and positive, not only to me, but to other people. I met Zieg. I met Stale. Stale was the person that minted my first Genesis. Nice. I met, I've been very fortunate to have people. And then slowly, I met Greek Freak, Fence Maker, Fettuccini, DYOR, Cardano Robin, so many people that are now considered / well-known. But at the same time, those people are humble. Those people are helpful. They're supportive. But when I was on other blockchains, I don't want to name them, and I would go into their spaces before now, not now, they were a little bit negative, and this is what I didn't like. There was a little bit of bullying. There was a little bit of a clique mentality where they laugh with each other on someone who just came on stage or something like that. Now I see that blockchain changing towards something like us. When I go into the other blockchains, I feel like it's because they came into the Cardano ones, the Cardano spaces. They heard us talk. They heard how supportive we are. They heard how we are. they started slowly changing. And now, even if I've been on a few ETH stages, they've been very nice to me. They haven't said, "Oh, you're on Cardano." No, they've been like, "Tell us more. We want to understand more. We're hearing a lot about Cardano, etc."
Yeah.
Oh, do you need to pick that up?
I just need just a minute.
Yeah. So this is kind of what I see. The beauty of us being in the CNFTs is that we are bringing that out, and we are leading with heart and example. So this is kind of why I stayed myself, to be honest.
No, that's actually so true. I think also, maybe just to be fair, like maybe other blockchains were earlier. I think some of those that were around earlier will be in different groups. So one is the devs, like if you look at CryptoPunks, for example, or the earliest ones, they're basically, I assume, I don't know enough to be honest. I'm assuming here, but I'm assuming that they are basically developers who know the technicality of NFTs and tokens, and they thought of creating something cool, and they made it, and that's it. They made it for the tech, and now they have.
And by the way, they were minting them for free. You only had to pay gas.
Because it was probably just more of a proof of concept kind of thing, where they're like, devs creating something cool, and that's it. And then there's a bunch of, or let's say a period, the gold rush period, which we had during that period, where a lot of it was based on making money, which is not wrong in its sense, because it's part of the whole, let's say, story. But it's a part of it. It's not the whole thing. But to some people, it is the whole thing. So to those, usually they would just care the most about pumping, selling out, hype, and that's it. And boom, disappears, or it's rugged, or it just stays irrelevant afterwards. Money has been made. Go on to the next one. And there is still that kind of industry going on. We also have that, a bit of that in Cardano, I will say. And there are some projects which have that nature. And not to I disapprove of people, for example, using spam on Discord to advertise their project. I think that, to me, is a label, because a project that does that, to me, it clicks automatically with the kind of project that just hypes, sells, and goes out. So when I see you inviting with spam on Discord, I automatically label you as one of those. I'm not interested at all in getting into your project.
Which is sad, because sometimes I click on them and I go like, the art is really nice, but I'm afraid. Like
I don't even touch them like with a
10-foot pole. You're like, no.
Like, no, I'm not even going, because to me that's just, some people talk about red flags, and I don't like the too much sensitivity about red flags. But if I see spam of Discord spam for a project, I immediately have prejudice against them in terms of their direction. Maybe they don't mean it, and that's why sometimes I feel bad. But for me, it's one of the easier ways to filter out a project that doesn't seem interested in genuine community. Maybe they don't mean it. Like, I've advised some projects after they DM me, they tell me, how do I expand my community? It's one of the biggest questions that I always get, is how do we grow our community? And I a name, but they basically
we are having
project. And then I went back on Twitter.
Sorry, Fahadouken, we had a little connection issue. If you mind repeating the last maybe 1 minute. You said they would DM you, and then they would ask you for advice on the community, and then we missed the second part.
Yes, okay. So I would normally give them some advice about how to grow the community, but then one day later or a few days later, the same project, I got an invite DM spam. And then I was genuinely disappointed. So I went back to them on Twitter, and then I screenshot that and said, guys, this is not really a nice look. And then they're like, well, we are kind of desperate. We couldn't get the word out, etc. And then I told them, well, the result you will get is not really a community that will enjoy your projects, because they never came for the enjoyment. They came for the hope and hype. And that's not sustainable. No. But it's different approaches. Like, if you want to subscribe to that group, and if your conscience makes you happy about selling to people just based on hype and then disappearing, if that's okay to you, and anyone who's speculating whether they're a flipper or they're an investor or they're a buyer or they're a collector, If you're happy with taking a risk with a project that basically builds on that hype train, then it's okay. It's up to you. You just need to realize that this is what you're getting into. Some people are good at that art of identifying those types of projects, and they do make some money. But to me, why makes my conscience feel bad is that money made is on behalf of somebody else who came in with the hope and ended up not getting anything. And that's why I am not a fan at all of any project that, I'm not saying hype is bad. I'm saying talking about hype without much substance. I'm talking about something that doesn't have a genuine, let's say, substance of a creator or a concept or an art or a community that it's built around. And somebody could say, well, who do you think you are to actually judge? I once had that comment saying, who do you think you are to call a project low effort? And it's fair, it's subjective. It is very subjective. But I can confidently say that at least those in the bracket of 10% lowest effort ones, and I'll use the word low effort here, are obvious. You can easily, like, I could show a child 2 different projects, and they could easily identify which one of them was pretty and which one of them was not. And I don't mean it in a way to judge against projects that don't look nice. I also think it's subjective, and art is very subjective, and I am very apprehensive of that. I'm talking about something that's like it just gives those kind of, let's say, negative perception that this was not a project which any artist would easily be proud of. Like, even if you see something that doesn't look pretty and the artist is still trying and is proud of the work, you will see it. But if you have a project that has a template of an animal and has a rainbow gradient in the middle of it, which is just obviously like nobody in their mind would call it, unless it was maybe satire or a joke or a parody, then otherwise it's just easy to identify like a difference between something that's been well quality controlled versus something that's just a 5-minute job. And I say this with much confidence. So a project that, for example, has that as its substance and is just spamming Discord invites should be easy. Unfortunately, some people in crypto or in this kind of investment don't really recognize, or maybe because they see that all projects are like this. But to those guys, I say, shame on you. Go and look at the great projects which have amazing actual art behind them, amazing actual creators behind them, amazing mindsets behind them and directions. Those are the ones that, to me, are the ones that can survive anything. Not from an investment point of view, but also because in real life, if you have a great product on a shelf and you have a lousy one, most probably people will buy the great one. So it's kind of that kind of concept in mind.
Yeah, and something that I love that you said also is that your opinion or mine or anybody's of something that is low effort is very valid. I mean, no one has the right to come and tell us, who are you? I don't agree with whoever said that to you, because that's not cool, and it's everybody has the right to say it. So who are you to tell me I'm not allowed to say that either? You know what I mean? And let's be honest, people have called my work low effort. I will say that. They were like, oh, this is just GAN stuff. Anybody can do that. I'm like, okay, sure, go ahead and do it. If anybody can do it, go ahead and do what I did, and I'm okay with it. But at the same time, my others that have come into the space, and this is where I feel it's a little, I don't want to say unfair, because everybody will get the time to shine at some point, but I see some fantastic artists, like, oh my God, I look at the art and I say, I wish I can do something like that, you know what I mean? And those people get barely any eyes on them. And this is where I feel people like me, who have a few thousand, you who have 18,000, Fet who's approaching 10. It's people like us who should, in my opinion, even if they are direct competitors to us, should go and look at this art and bring it out and say, look, I was just walking around the CNFT space and I bumped into this artist, and oh my God, am I impressed. Sometimes I do that without even buying, because lately I've been broke, but I still do
Welcome
it
to
because...
the club.
But why do I do it, and why do you do it? We do it because we genuinely feel this person deserves the eyes. They deserve some sort of eye on them. And hopefully if they get 1 or 2 sales, it gives them that little bit of boost Because I know when I sold, and I know when you sold, when we got that validation of someone buying our projects, that gave us a boost. That like people actually like it. People actually like what we're doing. And this gives us more and more and more energy to keep on going. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to keep on going to almost a year now, you too, and everybody else. And I feel this is a good segue to get into the projects you work on. So what is Fahadouken working on right now? We all know the obvious one, Equian, because everybody's heard about it. So there's Equian, and is there anything else?
So Equine is taking a big portion of our time, me and my partners in the project. It's a project beyond, I would say, most in terms of scope and in terms of realistic promise. There are a lot of projects which give maybe unrealistic promises sometimes. We are very careful to only give realistic ones, but even those that we have given are massive. We acknowledge that. So it's been loads of work to get all of that in place. I think it's very good for any creator to always be very careful in not biting off more than they can chew. I think we are very ambitious, and so we did bite off as much as we did, but it also means that we basically have to be very careful about how much attention we need to give to this project. So I can fairly say 90% of my free time and mind, maybe 80% if I'm like very careful, is taken by that. There's the other one is it's not really something I'm actively working on, but it's rather a community that I really enjoy, and it's the Fahadouken Faha 100 Club, which you're a very nice member of. So it's actually a community of, I would say, very early participants in the space. It ended up becoming a very organic, let's say, group. And then we also have some later joiners who ended up buying some of the Fahadouken 3D pieces that people had duplicates or extras of. But it's an amazing community. I really enjoy the vibes there. It's all from people who are like mature, even with even heads, make a lot of sense. It's just amazing to have such a group looking at the space together with me and sharing their views and opinions. I learn a lot from them. It's not me and my fan club, it's rather me and the people I am a fan of. So it ended up being the reverse. So it's really cool. It's really cool because that's actually what it ended up becoming.
I take that very humbly because I am part of that club, and I will never
100%.
never. They say never say never, but I think I missed the sale, and it might, if I'm not mistaken, might have been even Cardano Robin that sold me one of them early on. Or I asked him, look, I think I won't be able to catch it. Can you buy me one, and I'll pay you for it? Something like that. Like I didn't buy it directly because I couldn't at that time, and I think I was even on a plane. I don't remember exactly when it was. So I ended up getting it. And you see me, I pop in and out of the Faha 100 because I'm so busy lately. But I come in, I act stupid, but I read everything. And then I leave. But you're so right. There are so many people in the Faha 100 that it is really a pleasure to be with them and to hear them and to see how they dissect things as a group. Not, as you said, not always, at least not ever, to harm a project, but if a good project comes out, they dissect it and they agree on why it's good. And if a meh project comes out, they still dissect it and they're like, where's this hype coming from, why is it like this, etc. And everybody talks about it. And I usually read, I don't contribute as much, but then I get to learn a lot from it too. And the Faha 100 is amazing to me.
So we've also been playing around and whether, for example, it's worthwhile to get into maybe, for example, making a Fahad token. I'm very conservative, generally speaking, even in a space that's so groundbreaking as Cardano and NFTs, where all the rules can be broken and you can immediately mint anything you can and you can do anything you want. But I'm just very conservative because I also don't want to do something that I don't feel is very comfortable doing and something that isn't sustainable. If it's done as a meme, then that's maybe okay. We're still kind of thinking of what's a good thing to do. There are some legit concepts, but it's not yet, let's say, decided or defined. So what else am I working on? I'm gonna give maybe a bit of attention to equine, though we haven't made announcements yet, but we are working on a lot of stuff. It's not beyond what we promised, because what we promised is already huge. So but we are looking at quality and excellence. So when we say we're making a game, a horse racing game in the system, we're working very hard not to create amazing metaverse and tokens and tokenomics and drop equine tokens, which will immediately make everyone so rich, because that's not what we promised. What we promised is to make an amazing game, and we're pouring a lot of time and effort into basically making it the best possible within that expectation and definition. So we want to bring something quality. We believe that by doing so, that quality will resonate to other people who never got into the project, including those who aren't even into crypto. And if we're so good, we would be able to grow that project so much by doing that. And that indirectly ends up growing the project and those who already bought into the project early on. So there is a benefit, but we believe in more sustainable type of, let's say, growing a project than just pumping something short term or releasing something that's hype and getting people excited about it. That's fine, but it's not very sustainable, in my opinion. So I'd rather not have to go through that and then try and fuss to make it sustainable. I'd rather immediately start with something that just makes a lot of sense. So that's been taking a lot of time. The dreams and ambitions are huge, both for equine and for me as a participant in the space. If you talk about maybe brainstorming and me chatting with you about what kind of ideas in my mind, I feel like there is room for a different type of launchpad. This is something I haven't chatted with in public, and very little maybe in private, if at all.
Are you giving me a scoop right now? Am I getting a Fahadouken scoop?
Yeah. I'm not sure. It's what's going in my mind. It's not yet established, but I've been thinking. So I opened up first of all, I had my DMs open for anyone who's asking for advice. Unfortunately, I got so busy that I ended up having to almost ignore a lot of them. And there's so many legitimate project owners, creators, artists who are looking for advice, and I'm failing to basically have the time to give them advice. And I've been thinking around, one concept would be to offer consultation in general. And that's one thing. Another fun way to go around it would be actually to have a different kind of, not really a launchpad, but rather a program where a creator can get in. They get consultation and advice and support from me. And then they get that kind of label, if that helps. Like, I don't want to call it that, because not like good artists or creators don't really need a stamp of approval, but it's more like, hey, we're working on this together. So it's more like a partnership kind of program. I want to have something that has a bit of structure, that it actually works, but it will also have to be very, let's say, selective in who gets into that. But it would also mean that it kind of takes away a lot of the homework. It allows the creators to be able to create the great stuff without having to worry about stuff like, for example, collection structure, or who can develop for us, or who can mint and who can create, and how can I do this certain part, how can I manage my community, because they'd get that advice. And also then the buyers or the people who are interested in the art will know that at least I've been able to check and make sure that, number one, the art was original, that the creators are genuine. I can never give a full guarantee or promise or liability that these guys will never, for example, whoever it is, I don't have a person in mind, but that they will not run away after doing their sale, because I can't really guarantee that, even if I had a contract in place. But it's still at least a form of maybe, it's not meant to be a gatekeeping thing, rather more of a, let's say, a program like, you've seen, for example, the reality shows, which you have somebody on the show getting their creation dissected, but then like who's America's Got Talent, or these kind of like where people get a chance to show what they have, but they also, if they're really good, they also get a lot of, let's say, audience and lots of people to see what they're doing. So that would take a lot of time. So I'm not yet saying this will exist, but it's just a thought in my mind.
I have two things to say. First, I have to say that it should work, because even me, as someone who has created before, the talks we had during the dinners we've had have really given me a certain light. Because if if you remember, we spoke about the cute creatures quite a long time ago. And then I sat on them for a long time because after speaking to you and after speaking to a few other people, I realized I don't want to release just another PFP. I wanted to release a PFP with some sort of fun utility and some sort of gameplay, which is why you can accessorize the ones that are coming. And we built the whole accessorization thing in the back. Alex from NFT Craze was able to do it for me with his team. So it took a long time, but it works. So
Nice.
I have to say it was partly because I spoke to you and I realized, okay, yes, I want this to come out. I'm anxious for it to come out. I believe in it, but maybe I should take my time.
Yeah.
Second thing I would want to say to you is that what I love this idea you're having, because one thing in my, as you know, because we've met, I call it my IRL job career is a business coach and sales coach for a company I work with at the moment. So I was thinking maybe I should be like a motivational coach or something for people in the space. So how about this? We create a panel of people like we're doing, like on a platform like this one, where, because one thing we can do with this platform is have one big screen and all of us on the side. So we create a panel like this. We call it the Cardano Shark Tank, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have projects come in, and all we do is for 1 hour, they give us an introduction the first 10 minutes. They have a 5 to 10 minute window to give us the introduction.
Yeah.
And then you, me, and maybe a few other people you want to nominate, we give them the actual advice that will be constructive for them.
Yeah.
And then let them go. And if they want to continue with
5 minutes for the pitch, 5 minutes
and
for
then
the feedback. Next. Yeah.
5 minutes for the pitch, 5 minutes for the feedback, whatever the structure we can do.
Yeah,
This can be, yeah, just like we can sit down and all think about it together and then come into it. And it doesn't always have to be me or you. Like you can host it as the main guy, and then your friends or your friend judges or whatever you want to call us, the friend consultants. There could be a rotation. Let's say I can't come in 1 month, someone else can come in or whatever, and we have this rotation of people that have done this before, that have been successful.
It could be a Faha 100 project as well. Like
it could be a Faha 100 project, yes. It could be the
It's
Faha
just
100
brainstorming, right? I'm just telling you
consortium,
of something that we
whatever.
feel is helpful for people. It has value. It brings value to creators.
Yes. There's an entertainment aspect. We can put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it will help whoever's watching it. Like part of this chats I'm having is, yes, I want to get to know some people. Again, you, it's a little different because I got to know you before, but a lot of the creators that worked on Cute Creatures, the concept came that I didn't know them very well. So I did want to get to know them face to face. I wanted to meet with them, talk to them, get to know the human behind the project. And for me and you, I think it's a little different, is because we've met a couple of times, we've had a few talks, we've actually spent actual time, that I feel like we can go a little deeper, we can talk a little bit more. And one thing I hope for, and I'm starting to get feedback because we already released 2 videos, one with Fett and one with Patrick Tobler, by the time this is recorded, is that people have come back to me and said, oh, I really enjoyed this one sentence. It really resonated with me. Or I enjoyed the way you spoke to each other. I really understood a few things. And so many golden nuggets came out of that conversation. Thank you for having it. Like, to me, that shows me that people are getting value out of what we're doing. It's not just me and you chatting and shooting the shit. No, it's actually, we're talking, we're having a conversation, and hopefully people will get something out of it and go back. Like this conversation we just had about projects and marketing and negative marketing, or something that might impact them negatively. Hopefully someone who's launching a project on any blockchain will come, because it's valid for all of them, will come and hear this and go, okay, maybe I should rethink it. Maybe I should take a little bit of time and find a different way to do it. And then they go and research. So I love that we're having those conversations. I know how busy you are, and I love that you are giving me the time. So I'm going to keep you as long as possible. Let's continue with another.
I can probably do 10, 15 more minutes. That's fine. I'm enjoying this. I also like what you said about giving advice. So even if you look at, for example, on YouTube, if you look at different advisors and coaches, you always find that there are 2 different types. Mm-hmm. There is a type that has limited form of content, maybe because they got the content from somewhere, or they only have a shallow understanding of the subject, and they just basically get that kind of attention. There's the other type, who are people who are usually experts on a field or in a matter. You'll notice that these people actually share almost the full extent of their knowledge to everyone on YouTube. And the way these guys actually derive value is, number one, that they are sharing openly, but then also number two is that these guys are such experts that they still have more value to unlock by being consulted. So when I see, for them, when I have a subject matter that I'm really not sure about, and I find people who are talking very shallow explanations, I usually don't get what I need. But then I find one guy who's saying 90% of what I need to know, but then there's still a 10%, and there's a validation of knowing that that answer exactly is what fits my case. I would be inclined to go to that person still and ask them for the advice, because they know, they don't just memorize a sentence or two, they actually understand what they're talking about. They can hear my case, they can give me valid advice that's valuable and worthwhile, because they can actually take that and translate it into what they know and what they think. So I think that's also a value which says, I'm not really hiding anything. I'm happy in any interview to share everything I believe in and I know. And that doesn't mean that I'm losing anything, because I'm not really hiding any information or knowledge. I'm happy to share what marketing tactics work and what doesn't. That doesn't mean that, for example, I'm giving away something that I also know, because I'm still also happy to give advice to certain projects which tell me, hey, we have this. And I can tell them, by the way, I think your art needs to be polished a little bit more for public appeal. And that's me saying in a nice way, your art doesn't maybe get up to average level. And that's fine. It's a subjective view. That's what I think. Maybe telling them, for example, no, well, your marketing should be this way, and this part you're missing or you're forgetting, or you should focus on this rather than that, or you should do this or not. There is still, let's say, catered or tailored advice that can always be given, or even the validation. Like I've done my own consultation with experts in some certain fields where I tell them, hey, you're an expert in this matter. Well, I'm doing A, B, C, D, E. What do you think? And these have been paid consultations by the hour, where they would say, oh, well, I hear you're doing this. Are you doing A or B? And I'm like, well, I'm doing A. And then when I finish, what they end up saying is, well, you're doing it right. Just wait. This is working. This is perfect. And I paid my consultation, but I'm also completely happy because I got validation from an expert that's gone through and just tells me, well, you're doing it right. Keep doing it. So it's really interesting to always get an expertise. I was talking with a project last night through DMs, where somebody was asking, well, I have a certain developer that might be working on my project, and I'm not sure if I should go with them or not. And my advice on this subject was, well, it really depends, but the developer you're working on holds the keys to everything, because they will be handling all the payments that will go. So they are a risk factor in that they can basically route the payment to anywhere else they want to. It's reality. And they also will probably hold the minting keys to your project. So they can also mint duplicates. They can create more. They can burn. They can do whatever they want. So it's a big, let's say, factor is the dev. And then I said, and it's not really gatekeeping, but it's also very important to be apprehensive of who exactly they're partnering with and the risk related to. So I said, well, in my understanding, the ones I know personally and they know have a consistent track record of creating are persons A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And they said probably like 8, 9 names of people who I know. And they said, this is not comprehensive. I might have missed a few other trustworthy persons, and there's other newcomers, but these are the guys. But I also told them that usually they'd expect a portion of the sales as a kind of a payment. They said, well, that's a bit steep, but maybe it's worth it. And then I told them, well, what you're also getting is, number one, top-notch experience. What you're getting is reliability. What you get is expert advice and no surprises. So it's one of the things that this is what you get for what you pay. And it's kind of interesting because it's a balance, and eventually these things will probably be much more widely available. It will be easier to find or be able to maybe take in your hands, because developing or minting an NFT series is already getting a bit easier with things like NFT Maker Pro and things like that, but still kind of is still getting, I guess, fine-tuned to be much more easy to handle for a non-technical person. There's other projects as well. I'm probably missing a few, but there's others which give artists platforms to mint without needing a dev. But some other projects really need to have a dev, like somebody who needs to make a generation of certain elements and to make art that uses those different pieces, or a quality check of metadata. There's so many projects that maybe didn't do a quality check of metadata, and they end up having issues where the metadata is not accurate or has an inconsistent format or all kinds of stuff. So having somebody experienced will save you all of that. You'll just have a clean product. You don't need to worry about that side. This is another piece of advice that I'm happy to give openly, that this is what you would be getting by doing this, and this is what you get by doing the other thing. It's so much like we thought that it's such a simple thing. Some people say, "Oh, look at these guys! They made 500,000 by just selling 10,000 pictures." There's so much more behind that. There's so much more thought. It can be sometimes for a low effort job. It can be done like in a few days' work, maybe. And if you go and buy that, well, it's on you. Maybe there's something else that made you buy it. But generally speaking, it's so much more than just that. And there's so much thought in creating a good product, at least for the let's say solid projects out there.
That you said something very important too. You said that it's on you. Doing your own research is super important. Whatever I say, whatever you say, whatever anybody hears on YouTube, on Twitter Spaces, on anything, is at the end of the day, it's on you, because you need to make sure that whatever you're spending in the crypto space, you have to know that it is quite risky. It is very risky. There is nothing that is blue chip. I hate that word. I think it's the worst word that anybody can use, because it's throwing people into a mindset that makes absolutely no sense in this space, in my humble opinion. And it's on us. It is on me to create something that is worth someone spending money on. It is on them to make sure that I am trustworthy enough. As much as I say and do, it is not. I will always try my best to portray myself as transparently and openly and trustworthy as I can. But at the end of the day, this is the crypto space. We are extremely, extremely at the beginning of it. Even though it's been there for a long time, this is where it's growing. And with that comes a lot of responsibility on both us and them. When I go buy into a project, I am taking that responsibility on myself. If it gets rugged, it's my fault for not knowing.
Also remember, I mean, there's very, very important thing to keep in mind, that even the most successful people in this space, even the most successful creators or collectors or buyers are all human, and they all make mistakes. It's reality. If somebody makes a lot of mistakes all the time, then maybe that's a warning or a concern. But in the end, we are all human. We all make mistakes, and I've made a fair amount of mistakes, and I have my imperfections, and so do creators, and so do. It's actually hard to be perfect. It's almost it's by definition impossible for a human to be perfect. So let's just keep that in mind. But there's a certain level of high standards which maybe we hold people to. So and like I said, there's so much depth to any project, where because the barrier of entry is so low and everybody can come and create, it means so many people have a chance to show and appear and get the platform and attention, which is amazing. But at the same time, it also means that so many people are coming in maybe without being aware of the traditional expectations of anything. If you go and look at traditional publishing, what are the expectations? Number one, you have all the rights to the work that you're making. Number two, you have all the legal frameworks. You have a company, you have a structure, and you have all of that. You have your finances, you have your taxes, you have your technicalities, you have your printing machinery, or you have somebody who supplies that. You already have the artwork, you have the series, you have the definition and the design. And I'm making it sound hard, but the reality is that anybody in the traditional space, you will never hear of a big or known or successful publisher completely ignoring, for example, licensing, unless they really don't know what they're doing. But in NFTs, it's much more acceptable, just because the barrier of entry is so low that they're still going to be able to have a platform. But all I'm trying to say is that even the best intentions and the creators with the best intentions sometimes can mess up in 1, 2, or 3 ticks or details. And that's fine. But then the difference is also how they handle it, because they could handle it by rectifying the issue, by fixing things, and by being transparent. And they could handle it by being completely oblivious and ignoring it. And those two are
And
also, to me, are what make a difference.
I mean, one huge red flag for me is when they handle it by blocking you. Like not you as Fahadouken, by blocking anyone that kind of says something.
That's usually one of the reasons people come to the public space and say, I get a lot of these messages saying, hey, Fahadouken, and this would be somebody sharing with me, not because I'm a policeman, but because I have a network. So if I spread that, it kind of just keeps people aware. It's like I entered into this Discord and I asked them some questions and they got blocked. And why would you need to block someone if you're confident in what you have? I just got blocked out. So for example, one of the things we were very careful for Equine is, even though until today I have maybe 2, 3, 4 community members in Discord, actually it's probably just 1 or 2 who I know by name, and they know have regularly been saying negative things in the Discord, asking, why is nothing happening? When Moon, I could have invested in X project. And they keep saying that, and they still haven't been blocked because maybe they're just human and they're impatient and they're not happy with how it's doing. But I am confident in what I have, and I'm not worried by them saying that. And thankfully, I also have the back of a whole community of owners who entered knowing. So I don't even have to say anything, because usually the answer to that will be, you had the roadmap very clear. They said the game is going to be towards the closer to the end of 2022 in the third quarter. You already know the expectations. Please be reasonable. This is a long hold, blah, blah, blah. But my point is, I'm not sensitive to that because I know what I'm doing. I think anybody who is so sensitive that they need to block because they feel that this is FUD, then maybe they need to just consider how they are portraying themselves if they reach that. Sometimes, unfortunately, there is a legitimate case of a FUD storm that is not genuine. Sometimes people get, and this is unfortunate when it comes to people who are trying to start up and maybe they don't have enough connections and they didn't grow organically. But that's part of the risk of having an invite contest or spam, is you get this uncertainty. When you grow organically, you don't really have that concern because you have enough people who believe in the project. Otherwise, if you have a random group of people who came into that, then suddenly somebody saying this is a red flag, you start finding all these people who joined in without really having a substance. They will start also blowing up or snowballing. So this is kind of why that is bad. This is what you get exposed to.
I completely agree with everything you say, and I'm loving everything you're saying. I want to be mindful of your time, so I'll ask you 2 questions that I always ask. Well, I'm starting to always ask at the end of every call I have. Number 1, if you were to go back in time and meet Fahadouken 7-8 months ago, what would you say to him?
I would say keep doing what you're doing. You're doing amazing. I've had moments where I genuinely questioned what I was doing and also how much I was spending on collections. I had moments of doubt when I thought, hey, maybe this will actually go to zero. But I also had the comfort of never putting in what I can't afford losing. But I still felt, okay, maybe this is not really worth, or maybe I'm being silly by going so deep into this. But now that I've crossed through this whole period, I can say that I've gained so much more than that. I've learned a lot. I have my small regrets here and there, but in the big picture, there is no big regret. I'm completely happy with how things are turning out. I would say believe in the future. This is basically what I tell myself.
Okay, next question is, if we flip it, if your future self comes back to you today and tells you something today, what would you like them to say to you?
I would like to say congrats, we made it.
And this is what I was hoping you would say, because I know you will make it. I have full confidence in your team, especially like the Equian team, because I know them. I know who they are. I've had certain chats with some of them. I have full confidence. Me and you have had the private chats, so I know where you're coming from. I know how you're structuring everything. So I really have full faith in you guys, and I really hope it goes where you want it to go, because one big success story will trickle down to many big and smaller success stories too. When we see a project...
Yeah, let me share a real thing. Like you talked about connections and how they are
Yes.
one of the most valuable things. I have seen just in the period after the drop until today, I have seen stories which inspire me to make sure that this goes and reverberates well beyond where we are now. I've heard stories of people connecting with their family. I've known people who have basically started equine stables with their father or brother. I know people who have
Wow.
communicated with family and have a bond across this. And it's just it gives a platform for people to be able to connect in a different way because hey, we can
Yeah.
own horses together and we can like have a venture, and it's kind of fun
Yeah.
to be able to do this with NFTs. So
Yes.
just having that touched me so much because I feel like I have been able to contribute to people having something to connect with.
Yeah.
And that's beyond the level of just me as a creator connecting with the buyers, but rather
Yes.
allowing people to connect using my NFT as a subject or project as a
Yes.
subject to connect with each other is just a
Yeah.
whole nother level. And I think
Yeah.
this is something that should be spread much, much wider. And I think it's something that really brings value to everyone.
Yeah.
I think this probably was not the subject of or the immediate subject, but it's also the border around us. I just at least want you to give me at least a few minutes to talk about cute creatures. I want to know a little
Okay.
bit about it.
Okay. So the point of those chats is not to promote creatures, it's to promote the people that I feel have had a hand in it, whether it be direct or not. I call you a friend of the drop because you have had a hand in so much of shaping the way I view things with big drops, because this is my first big drop, and this is why I called you a friend of the drop in this one. And it's a part of my way of thanking you guys, and also letting people get to know you all is not to promote my drop, but to promote whatever you're into and you as people. But if you want to know, I can tell you a little bit. Basically, the creatures you see around, there's 8,888, because, for me, the number 8 means something. It's the Asian culture infused in me since I was a little boy. Even though I'm not Asian, I don't appropriate it, but I'm very, very much into it.
Technically, you are Asian, aren't you?
Well, I speak Chinese. Well, technically, yes, but I do speak Mandarin also. So, yes, technically, I'm from Asia, the continent.
Yes.
But not
as
what people perceive, as you are, yes. But
not Far East Asian, you're Middle East Asian, yeah? Okay.
I'm Middle East Asian, exactly. Not what people perceive as Asian when they see us, right?
Yes.
So like, those creatures came in at least 6 months ago, I would say. I don't remember exactly when. I had experimented with another version of them just to see if they work. And then I told myself, okay, I love them. The more I showed them to people, like Patrick Tobler, for example, was one of the first people to see them because I wanted to NFT Maker Pro to be part of it, etc. And he said, I'll admit that the first time I saw them, I didn't understand them, but the more I look at them, the more I like them. I said, good, because that's kind of where my art is. People don't always understand it. But then the second thing I wanted is that I didn't want to just drop another PFP. To me, it's not about dropping something big and selling out. I wanted to drop something that people will be proud of owning as it is. And I wanted them to play with it, because one thing I've maintained on all the spaces I've been on is like, I love it when someone takes my piece of art and bastardizes it. It's like, go and have fun with it. Do whatever you want to it. And to me, this means a lot, because it's a sign of respect to deface a piece of art, in my opinion. I come from that school.
Art is something that provokes. Art, in my personal definition, I don't know if there's a formal definition that maybe is close to it or not, but is an intentional human creation that provokes thought or emotion. That's it. It's a simple one, but it has to be intentional, not something that you by mistake made, and that it provokes either thought or emotion. That's it. Whatever what the medium is. So why you appreciate somebody playing with your art, because that validates and makes you sure that you evoked or provoked those feelings or thoughts. That's
100% with you. I thank you for bringing that up, because I've always maintained that for me, art is an emotional response. If you get that emotional response to it, I did my job. Or thinking, yes. Yeah. To me, I did my job. If it made you think, if it made you emotional, I did my job. This is what I want. So part of this concept of bastardization of my art, or defacing it or playing with it, I thought, why not give people the tools to do that? So I wanted to make my own accessories for them. I'll be honest, I did play with my own accessories and I just didn't like them. It didn't feel right. So I thought, okay, why don't I ask the community to come in and make them? So if you remember, I put out that tweet about 2 months ago, and I said, looking for artists for a big collab, please let me know if you're interested. And many people came in, and we ended up with 20 artists. So we have 20 projects on this who created specific accessories for them. We have some that created one accessory, but the concept is to make it easier. I told them, you have 100 tokens, you can do whatever you want. You can create one and we mint it 100 times, or you can create 100 of them and we mint them once. So horror cubes, for example, they made 100 versions of 2 or 3 things. So they had 100, they have 100 one-of-ones, and there's some of my favorite ones that come on it, but different people have different ones. So there is 2,000 pieces of accessories made by the collab projects.
Nice.
And then the rest of it is made by the illustrator, because not many people know this, and I'm trying not to promise it, because as you know, to promise something means you have to stick to it. But it is phase 2 of the project. We've already started it. Phase 2 of the project is either comic books or animation, or start with comic books and graduate into animation of each of the cute creatures, which have their own personalities and all of that. So I'm creating the lore as we speak. And this illustrator is someone that I really loved. I'll admit that I tried to find someone in the scene, but everybody is busy. So I found someone from outside and brought them in. Yes. And he loved the concept. We vibed. He saw my vision and he was able to illustrate them in very nice ways. So he created a lot of the accessories. So we have what we call accessory, whatever its name is, by Cute Creatures, and because he's part of the team. And then we have accessory by Horror Cubes, by the Hoskinsons, by the Never Engine, by Udon. Udon was able to do a few, by like so many of them that are part of the season 1 accessories. So when you buy it, you're buying bundles. You will buy one cute creature plus 2 accessories come in the bundle. So if you buy 10 creatures, you have 20 accessories, and you can use them on the creatures as long as they are compatible. And then you can remint them. So you're not just downloading a JPEG. We're trying to create a little bit of value where you can remint that specific combination. And that combination cannot be reminted. So once this combination is minted, that's it. The system will not allow you to remint the exact same one.
Interesting.
And where we're playing a little bit with rarity is that those creatures have what they call a static rarity. So if you have a virgin creature that's never been reminted, that's a static rarity. It's part of the drop. The accessories have their static rarity, but the combinations are what we call dynamic rarity. So if you get, let's say you get the Horror Cubes 1-of-1, right? If you mint it, if you use it as an accessory once or twice or 10 times, what's the real rarity? Is it still the 1-of-1, or is it 1-of-1 used 20 times?
I see. So you're playing with the rarity of an item versus how much the owner used it to mint combinations.
Yes.
So the owner can choose and say, hey, I'm the only one who owns this. I'm only going to make one if they want to.
If they want to. But those are the ones that made a 1-of-1 accessory, right? But let's say street art.
But nothing gets burned. Does anything get burned?
Nothing gets burned. No. We don't want to burn anything, because the way we see it is that you paid for this accessory. It's not fair of us to burn it. But you control how it's being used. Now, the 1-of-1s, you will have full control of it. But this accessory that was minted 100 times, 100 people have full control of it.
That's an interesting derivative, because it's an interesting approach. I'm curious to see how it plays out. Like we've only seen a few projects that have done like this kind of, let's say, variation of combinations. So we had Time Trotters is maybe one example, which they did their thing, but it was in a much more linear path where you can only combine a generation 1 with 2, with 3, with 4, and then the ultimate result is just one version. This is the
Yes.
only possible. Like there's
Yeah.
8 different possibilities, and whoever got there first. So it almost ended up being like a race. Who are the first to
Yeah.
just make these combinations? There's the other one that had something similar. There was another one that had. Now we have the Cardinos, where you can make a Gigasaurus by combining one from each series, but then those
they
are
burn them too, right? Yeah.
burn, and then but they also give you a skeleton version of the one you burned.
Oh, cute. Okay.
But they remove all the accessories. So if it's
Yeah.
a species that's been burned like 100 times, there's gonna be
Yeah.
100 skeletons of that species. But it's still an NFT. It will have this number and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And they give you the Gigasaurus, which combines all 3 together and gives them. You can choose. You can use a configurator, but there's no. I think there is no exclusivity. So if the 3 people use the same exact combinations, they'll have identical looking copies of that, but with different numbers.
Yeah.
But that's a different approach. But the one you guys are taking is also, and there was Dead Pixels, I guess, which also will have the Forge system, which is a bit different. I think you guys also share a square kind of motif, but with a very different art style and approach to accessories. So I think it's very interesting. I'm really interested by how it ends up turning out. I haven't seen enough of the art. I see the small surrounding us pieces and examples, and I think that's kind of exciting in a way.
I will be posting very soon. I think on Monday I'll be posting the how-to, like how to use the accessorizer. I'll send the video.
When's the drop going to be?
Thursday, 27th of Thursday the 27th. Remember I asked you when's a good day? We're like Thursday, Friday, so I decided on Thursday to let the Arab world have their share too, because most of the Arab world has weekends on Friday, and then on Friday the rest of the world can also jump in if they want to. Yeah.
Thursday is probably usually good because it's not too busy, but it's already close to the weekend.
Well, hopefully the Sunday swap craziness will be a little bit down, and we'll have a network that can properly mint, and we won't have the issue of people waiting 6-7 hours for a bundle, but hopefully that will happen. Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Thank you. And thank you very, very much for coming on. This has been one of my favorites. I love. I mean, me and you can sit down for 6 hours on a dinner and talk until they kick us out, which is what happened the first time we met. But twice. So thank you very much. We will stay in touch for sure, but I really appreciate you taking the time for this. And any last words before we end this?
Thank you for having me on. It's always nice to jog down memory lane. It's also nice to remind myself and remind everyone of what I think and what I believe in. I think it's always helpful. I always enjoy also hearing your perspective on things. I enjoyed going through this. So thank you. It was a bit short notice on when exactly we're going to jump on, but I was happy to do so. It was very, very nice subjects to talk about. I wish you luck with the Cute Creatures project, and good luck.
Thank you. And I'll just stop the recording, and I'll just have you stay for a few minutes.
Okay.